Week 13 in the NFL featured some vintage performances from star players around the league, a walk-off by the no longer winless Lions, and a Monday Night Football statistical anomaly for the record books. So what does Week 14 have in store? The NFC East suddenly got pretty interesting after a fourth consecutive win from the football team. They can cut the divisional lead to just one as the first-place Dallas Cowboys come to town.
The confidence keeps building. We practice hard all week, and we just feel good where our team's at right now. Hopefully we just keep the ball rolling.
In the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs are suddenly red hot with 5 straight wins. But they've been getting it done in different ways than past years, relying on their defense, having held their last 5 opponents to just 17 or fewer points, and will look to make it 6 straight against a struggling Raiders team at Arrowhead.
I could really just attribute it to everybody just staying together, staying committed.
Out in Tampa, Josh Allen and the Bills coming off a disappointing performance on Monday Night Football, but they won't have it any easier against a Bucs team that seems to have rediscovered their mojo and have their eyes on the top seed in the NFC.
Obviously, our biggest football games are ahead of us, but we're in a decent position at 9-3, and going home now for the biggest game of our year against the Bills.
And Week 14 wraps up between NFC West rivals, the Cardinals hosting the Rams. LA might have the more high-profile roster, but the Cardinals could all but wrap up the division with a season sweep over the Rams.
Everybody steps up when they need to. That's the great thing about this team.
Who will rise to the occasion as the battle for playoff positioning heats up? We could be in for another wild week in the NFL.
All right, looking at the notables. Ravens lead the division, but they are actually underdogs at Cleveland. Cleveland coming off the bye, maybe got a little healthier. And what about the Bucs? Just 3.5 over the Bills, who Bills lost on Monday night. So it'll be a short week on the road after they played in those, wind monsoon type of conditions and lost to New England. They're going to have to pick it up very quickly. Niners on the highway, they're favored. And Cards in that Cards-Rams showdown, they are favored at home over the Rams. All right, Pete Prisco covering the league, 30-plus years NFL insider. Todd Fuhrman, our professional. Let's break this down, get our little look-ahead play here. Todd, I'll start with you. Bills at the Bucs, 3.5 is the total, or the side. The total, 53.5 here as an over-under. What do you want to do with this?
You know what, EK? I'm going to go over the total, but I'm not going to do it for the full game. I'm going to go over the total in the first half at 26. When you look at this Bills team, there's no doubt that they've heard the naysayers in the wake of that dreadful performance on Monday. But it was more their defense, in my opinion, that let them down more so than the offense. I think Brian Daboll knows his feet are to the fire in terms of getting this team out of its comfort zone. And when you look at Tampa defensively, they're vulnerable in the secondary. So look for Josh Allen to throw early and often. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ball, the Bills are going to see what life is like against an elite passing offense without the services of Tre'Davious White. I think Tom Brady gets off to a quick start. The Bucs are able to do what they want when they want through the air. And I like this game to start fast. I'm going over the total in the first 30.
And I like this game to go over the entire game. I really do. I love the over, in fact, of this game. Look, the Bills, that was not football the other night. The win was awful. He couldn't throw the football. It was terrible to watch. It was a horror game in terms of what you like aesthetically, in terms of how you'd like to see the game played. It was awful. I hate the wind. Well, it's not going to be windy in Tampa. And Josh Allen's going to throw the football around. The Tampa Bay defense is not very good on the back end. They are getting guys back, I know, week by week, and they'll get better by the end of the season, but not yet. So they'll score, and Tom Brady will score as well. So I like the over a lot, but I'm going to also take the Bills in this spot, plus the points. I think it's a high-scoring game, close, and in the end, the Bucs will pull it out. But you're going to give me 3.5, I'll take it.
All right, Pete, pivot back to you. Niners given on the highway in Cincy, 48.5 is the total. I'm going to leave this one to you because, to me, the Bengals, don't bet on them, don't bet against them. I never know what I'm going to get. They are the life is like a box of chocolates club right now. What do you want to do with this one?
I had a tough time with this game, and I picked it a bunch of different places in my picks. We picked it on the Pick 6 podcast, and I still don't have a real good feel for it. I really don't. I think the one thing that's in favor of the Bengals, the 49ers playing back-to-back road games, that's always tough. They didn't play well in the second half against Seattle, but, Cincinnati wasn't good at times against the Chargers either. But I think my lean is to the Bengals, but this is not a game I personally love. I really had a tough time, and I know that a lot of people have too, because that number's moved a great deal, as Todd will tell you.
Yeah, you're right, Pete. I mean, we saw the Bengals actually open up as modest 1-point favorites, and the favorite has flipped. And I'm on board with this particular line move. Of course, I'm going to keep tabs on the injury report as we get closer to Sunday kickoff. Don't love the fact that Deebo Samuel was a DNP today, but I think this Bengals team is more banged up than they're letting on. I know Joe Burrow was a limited participant today. They said there were no ill effects of that dislocated pinky, but it's much different in practice in a controlled environment than when you're constantly under duress. And when you look elsewhere on this Bengals team, defensively, some major concerns. Logan Wilson has been the defensive quarterback. I think that is a massive loss in a game like this where Kyle Shanahan loves to use motion and a lot of misdirection to get players out of position. Chidobe Awuzie was working on a side field. We'll see his availability, and I'm still not buying into this Bengals offensive line being healthy. One of the bigger coaching mismatches we'll see on Sunday. I like the 49ers to go on the road and do what they do best, cover numbers with Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback.
Todd, when I see the matchups, I try to make the lines and the totals without looking and then sort of see where I'm different from what they've put out there. I thought this game would be a pick-'em with Baltimore in Cleveland. Both teams banged up. Baltimore's very banged up in their secondary and got torched in the fourth quarter by Ben Roethlisberger last week. Cleveland, they're banged up. I don't know how healthy Baker Mayfield is. I don't know how healthy they got during one bye week. What do you want to do here?
Well, EK, I can't argue with your number at a pick-'em. My core number here makes the Browns a 1-point favorite, but that's before I adjust for situation and some of the injuries here. The Browns coming in with extra rest, having had essentially playing one team twice in the span of 3 weeks. And you factor in that Baltimore had to go basically a full 60 minutes before coming up short against the Steelers. Life without Marlon Humphrey gets to be much more of an uphill battle. Cleveland, this is an all-in effort. If Kevin Stefanski and company can't win this with some extra time to prepare, it's going to be a massive disappointment for this team this season. And while I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to be anywhere close to 100%, I do believe they're going to use the passing game to set up the run game, knowing how one-dimensional they were for stretches against the Ravens. The schedule makers handed the Browns a gift. Will they be good enough to take advantage? I'd like to think so. I'll bet them on the money line to get a key divisional win.
I think they're going to cover the number. I think this is one of those situations where you look at the number, and I'm with you, EK. I looked at the number, and I said, boy, they're begging you to take the Ravens in this spot. And so I'm going to take Cleveland, not just for that reason, but I think those injuries in the secondary are going to show up week in and week out. And here's the legitimate question. When was the last time the Ravens looked good playing football? It was in the middle of October. They haven't had a dominant game since the middle of October. The offense is disjointed. Lamar Jackson's getting hit way too much. I think Myles Garrett's going to have a field day here. And I think the Browns will run the football and take some of those shots down the field off of play action. I like Cleveland minus the points.
All right, and then we have Monday Night Football. Rams at Arizona. Arizona at home, a 2.5-point favorite. I feel like with the odds makers, they've said Arizona's arrived. Now we're making them a favorite at home against the Rams. Also, the Rams have not looked good. The quarterback has not looked great lately. The defense has been very suspect lately. It's not a big defense. Kyler Murray put in the end zone 4 times last week, come back from injury. Total 51.5. What do you want to do here, Pete?
I'm going to take Arizona and the under. I think when you look at the Cardinals, they've really navigated a tough stretch with injuries and not having Kyler Murray, and Hopkins wasn't in there. And you look at their numbers, they're third in the league in point differential. This has been a good football team that doesn't get the respect it deserves. And remember, they went to L.A. and just dominated the Rams earlier in the season. I think they're the better team. I think across the board, they are the more physical team. I think their defense is actually right there with the Rams. And I think offensively, when they get it cranked up, they're tough to stop. You know, the Rams' offensive line has had all kinds of problems this year. They played well last week against Jacksonville, but that's Jacksonville. This is a big step up. I think this is going to be a low-scoring defensive game. In the end, I think the Cardinals cover it, but I also really like the under in this game.
How dare both of you guys question the breakout performance from the Rams offense last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars? It's just with the doctor order, but there are definitely some concerns about the Rams showing that level of consistency against a divisional opponent. I'll be frank, gentlemen. I like this game a lot more as a fan than I do as a bettor, knowing that I missed the 3 on the Rams, but I'll still make a slight case for them winning this football game outright. You talked about the earlier meeting, and I think that was the game that announced Arizona had arrived on the scene, that maybe the Rams got caught in a flat spot and a little bit of a letdown. That won't be the luxury here. All the pressure in the world on Arizona to seal up the NFC West. I think the Rams know they have to play with a sense of desperation. And with Matthew Stafford at least rallying from a slow start last week, I think the back looked to be a little bit healthier. They'll find some success using a balanced attack. I love the fact that the Rams were able to establish a ground game without Darrell Henderson and getting Sony Michel involved. They'll use the ground game and play action to take advantage of the pass. And Arizona has been a little bit underwhelming at home from a point spread perspective this year compared to how good they've been on the road where they're beating everybody by double digits.
Todd, I think you identified it perfectly. How much was last week's win over Jacksonville because it was Jacksonville, and how much did the Rams get right and use that going forward? Are they better, or did they just play Jacksonville? It's an interesting question. All right, what's your favorite of the look-ahead spots? Todd Fuhrman.
You know, when we look at coaching mismatches this late in the year, I don't think it can be understated in terms of what coaches can do to make their opponents feel uncomfortable. And the absence of Logan Wilson calling plays defensively for the Cincinnati Bengals, in my opinion, will put them in a very difficult spot. Would I love Elijah Mitchell being 100% for sure? Would I want Deebo Samuel out there being full go? No doubt about it. But I think the 49ers know this is one of the most important football games they're going to play. It's not the same Bengals team that they blew out in Cincinnati a few years ago, but I think San Francisco getting slightly healthier on the defensive side of the ball, specifically getting Fred Warner back in the mix, will pay dividends. I think this illness situation for Joe Mixon may be a little bigger deal than the Bengals are letting on. We'll see if he's a practice participant tomorrow. But I think the 49ers, a team that's had a lot of prosperity away from home against anyone not named the Seattle Seahawks, will perform just fine in the Eastern time zone. Give me the 49ers on the money line to knock off the Bengals.
You know, last week, and I usually like to do this, is I try to find a team, an underdog, who I think can win the game outright. And last week it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. This week it's the Washington football team. I think Washington is poised to make a division race in the NFC East. I really do. When you look at Dallas, they've struggled lately on offense. They haven't really looked like the Cowboys we saw early in the season. I know they've had some injuries, but it's not been the same offense. And defensively, Washington has made big strides across the board. Jonathan Allen is a beast in the middle of their line. They're playing so good, they're not even missing Chase Young and Montez Sweat. The corners have stepped up. The linebackers have become much more comfortable. I think this defense is going to limit Dallas. I think Taylor Heineke will play well on the offensive side of the ball. Give me Washington not only to cover the number, they're going to win the game outright.
Well done, gentlemen. I like it. Let's take a look and see exactly what Todd and Pete want you to do as we look ahead here. And there you go. First half over, Bills Bucs. Lots of points coming out. I'm sure the Bills will be thrilled to not have it be windy and freezing cold, be out in Tampa, like, oh my goodness, it's warm, we can play. Browns, they both like the Browns at home against the Ravens, and you see there the best look-ahead spot, Niners and Washington. One's a road team in a very close battle, 1.5 points, and the other, in fact, is an underdog, and Washington, Pete says they'll win outright.